when you think of wokeness, is wokeness as you practice it and believe in it, is it accepting of evangelical Christians?
Absolutely.
In what way? Like, say, for example, if you see an evangelical Christian say, well, pro-Israel things are acceptable to me, like I see it. I'm not self-proclaiming regardless. I see it as a logical how accepting of or
I guess I think that we all have our own story. We have our own history and for whatever reason, exposed to our life. Evangelicals are the same. I'm not going to change someone's point of view on how they feel. Now, would I like to have a conversation with someone and hear what the right idea is?
That's right. It's time for everyone's favorite Twitch politics show, The More Perfect Union. Covering the best in U.S. politics and Twitch political drama, we aim to disarm the left using the Constitution as our spear and shield.
The entire articulation for the use of deadly force is the imminent threat of death or great bodily harm. It has nothing to do with whether or not.
What was the threat?
As a matter of fact,
What was the threat? Are you out of your mind, Gappy? You're out of your mind. Get ready. The other thing is that the cost of enameled paints and Warhammer figures has gone through the roof. When you poll foreign citizens of other countries about our president, they don't vote, and they are not representing the voice of their governments. It is true that a lot of foreign governments are glad that Joe Biden is president because they steamroll his shit left and right every way, 7 ways from Sunday. Matter of fact, twice on Sunday. I care what the American people think. Hey there. All right. Here we are. Hopefully this is the big giant echo. I'll find out here in a minute. Or somebody could tell me if there's an echo. I don't think there's an echo. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. One doesn't know until one tries. One has to ask. Oh, goodness gracious. What a week. What a week it has been. I'm going to be honest. It's a little crappy. Oh, there we go. Too many things. Consolidating computer equipment. I've been invited to do some live stuff remotely. And what that basically means for me is that I have to, I'm tired of jacking with my setup, breaking it down even partially and sending it out. And so I am creating a separate field streaming gear setup, which is a second Rodecaster Pro, second laptop, just some stuff. It'll be a stripped down version of what I do, but it will be an effective version of what I do. So thanks very much, Deep South Jody. God, man, I haven't seen you in forever. By the way, thanks, Z. I think I chatted you, but thanks very much for being a part of what we're doing tonight. So, muchas gracias. Oh my god. Everything dies so fast. Okay, well that's cool. I'm gonna try to have try to see if we can get Discord running. Let me see. So this is a secondary mic. I have a probably can hear that, yes. I have a secondary mic. So when I'm over here on the old gaming computer, you might see that maybe there's some flight control stuff here. I've got a X56 HOTAS and hands-on throttle and stick, and I've got a couple panels over here. Plus, I got a Facecam Pro over there that I use for that. So whenever I'm gaming, I have a secondary thing that will control parts of the stream. So I'm going to do like WebRTC client, actually control my streaming computer from my gaming computer by virtue of a Stream Deck. So I'll be able to, without having to reach back over my shoulders. Anyway, so I was just, there's in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 version, there is a Maverick pack. So I was flying the Dark Star. It's hard to control something moving that fast. Just letting you know. I know you've known me for a while. Yeah, I've been streaming for what, almost coming up on a couple of years now. Let's see. What do we got here? Oh yeah, you like that? Doing a little bit of tuning of the old volume knobs. I have a Stream Deck Plus. They sent me one to evaluate. I'm telling you, it's a very cool thing. Trying to get Razer to send me their version because it's got more. I think it's got more knobs. Maybe have the same number of knobs. But it's like a Stream Deck. Yeah, man, it's pretty fun. So I'm kind of watching some stuff. Let me see if I could dip in here.
Your problem. That's a you.
You guys can you guys hear that?
Pronouns. That's a you problem. It's a you thing.
That's a Twitter live event that's going on. Hopefully you can hear that. Let me know if you can.
Guys, easy. Tony, I was just telling my team. I was just literally messaging my team. I'm like, guys, cursing is fine as long as it's not personal attacks. I literally just sent the message, and then you're like, Doc, shut the fuck up. So don't personal attacks, man. And so curse just in general, but not personally attacking someone. I know, man. They'll interrupt, man. These are sensitive. You should have seen yesterday, Tony. Yesterday we were covering what was it? The Russia-Ukraine war and Russia tensions. And the day before we were covering Iran protests. Interruptions were every 30 seconds. So this is like one of the least interruption, the most.
So I've asked to speak to these guys on Twitter.
So it will happen, but not that
as an opportunity, right? So we'll
make sure it doesn't happen more often. But
they'll be doing. But
no problem.
I'm gonna just take that way down.
I know, man. I know.
There's something I listen. Okay, so that means you can't hear it, so that's good. So that means when I get on there, you'll hear whatever discourse that goes in. So they have my request. There's 443 people in it. In case anybody's curious, I think it's Matt Farwell, Farwal, It's his Twitter thing. If you want to jump in and just kind of hear what's going on your own, you'll be 20 or 30 seconds ahead of me because, you know, delays being what they are, physics. But in any case, I was listening, as I often do on Saturday. There's some, you know, pretty decent Sirius XM Patriot has a number of things that they cover. And one of the shows that's on there is this black conservative named Sonny Johnson. And she's a conservative, and she talks. I know she gets the concept of conservatism and constructionism or constitutionalism. I know she gets it. But she brings guests on, like this guy today, a guy named Marcus Dixon. I think he may be with the National NAACP. And they talk about the rationale for justifying reparations. And the logic behind it is bereft of actual logic. The idea that black people today are harmed because of the effects of slavery, and even extending beyond that into Jim Crow, all the way into redlining or whatever, that somehow prevents African Americans in this country from being successful. And it it is a lie to say it. It is to get into Marxist ideology that says everything has to be a wedge. And they bring back the point that when Sherman, as he burnt Atlanta down, and he came up with his general order, his special order, whatever the hell it was, that took land away from white Southerners and gave it to black people. Subsequently, it wasn't allowed by Grant. It was overturned by operation of Congress, or Congress codified that that could not be done because it represented an illegal taking. And because slavery had been legal, it was not legal, therefore, to take away from somebody for that which was legal at the time. Now, I'm not making the moral argument. There's no question about the moral argument. But this guy, Marcus Dixon, I think he's actually running for Congress now. Or he's going to run for Congress. This guy says, all they said was, give us some land and get out of our way, and we'll build our own. We'll do our own thing. I mean, he so many racist things that he said today. And if you have SiriusXM, go look up her show and just do a replay. Hey, thanks very much for that follow there, Woodsman Bill. Man, talk about a hot minute. I haven't seen you in this iteration in a long time. The idea, right? The idea that you have to give your you have to give reparations, and then somehow the black community is going to self-segregate, build their own, as he called it, quote unquote, private towns, private homes, private this, private that, private whatever, self-segregate. They, blacks fought for years to end the practice of segregation. That was a Jim Crow holdover. And they get all of that stuff. And I say they get all this stuff. It was right to end it. It was right to end those practices. It was right to end redlining. It is right to call out overt acts of racism. It is right to call out actual policies that have the effect of discrimination based on race or gender. There is no question that that's the appropriate thing to do. Where the lines get super murky is when we start, we infer rights, when the Supreme Court gets it wrong and infers rights that don't exist. The same thing is true about inferred racism. If you don't support reparations, you're a racist. It is the redefinition of terms that allow people to paint others in the most horrific of ways. And this guy, Marcus Dixon, is basically saying, if you don't believe in reparations, you are part of the problem. That America benefited in the present day value in the trillions and trillions of dollars on the backs of slaves. Never mind at the absolute peak of slavery in the United States. Only 1.6% of the population owned any slaves. Now, there were, at the conclusion of the Civil War, there were, I think, 4 or 5. I don't want to say this and get it wrong, but there was a number of slaves who were freed. So the population, I think, was roughly 10%. The population in America of African Americans, or those who identify as African American, is roughly the same. It's somewhere between 10 and 13%. No, that's not what they did. That pursuit of knowledge, that is explicitly not what the war of no, it isn't. No, it isn't. You could say it It's not true. The states wanted to be able to decide their own terms. The North, Lincoln went to war with the South over unpaid tariffs. And you can look up his papers and you can see it. And it's not, and again, I'm not trying to get into a sidestep argument about whether or not the cause of slavery was moral or immoral. It was immoral. Okay? But that's not why the war started. Lincoln himself said that he cared not for the slave being free. Be free or not be free. It did not matter to him so long as the Union were preserved. So don't say that if that was Lincoln's thought process, that he was in favor at the outset of the war. If it were true, the Emancipation Proclamation would have occurred in 1861. But the Emancipation Proclamation was designed to cause uprisings so that Confederate soldiers would leave the battlefield and go back home. That's what that was for. Now, it doesn't mean that if the opportunity didn't present itself, okay, that he wouldn't have gone with it. Lincoln was a very astute political person. Okay, and the fact of the matter is that there was a very large anti-slavery movement in the United States at the time. And it had an impact, but it was not the cause for the start of the Civil War. And you're lying to yourself if you believe that. And I'm not the guy who subscribes to the lost cause, right? That's not a methodology. That's not a belief system. I don't have that conspiracy theory in my head. But you can look at the actual texts at the time. You can look at the money that the North, that the Union felt like it was not being able to collect because South Carolina said, we're not paying. The United States opened up the Civil War explicitly because Lincoln attempted to resupply Fort Sumter. He did a provocative act as a pretext to being able to engage in the war, but it was about collecting taxes. And make no mistake about it, history and the history books, at least the ones that haven't been quote unquote rewritten, will tell you that's exactly what the case is. So anyway, back to this thing. I'm just going to guess that based on what you're writing, that you are all about reparations. You're a big fan. And you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure you come off as a supporter. No? I think what look, you have to put things in the right context. So when the people that were in the South, right, they felt like they were being bullied by the Union, that they were losing the ability to control their own destiny. And whether that included what they perceived as the right to run the affairs of their states within the power of the Constitution. Because remember, the Constitution actually allowed slavery. Okay? It banned the importation of slavery, I think in 1808. Okay? But it didn't outlaw slavery, because the United States would never have been founded if the colonies that owned slaves were forced to give them up. They just would have been, and the United States would not have been able to manage economically either. Again, that's not a justification for it, but it is the reason why it was allowed to progress. And they wanted it to die out of its own accord. But as it happens to be, from the 1820s all the way up through the late 1850s, there was a significant move towards banning slavery, and even going to the point of not allowing or making it so states could choose to have or not have slavery as part of their constitution for new states that were admitted into the Union. So, you know, I'm not going to go any further down that rat hole. But the bottom line is that because this Marcus Dixon guy, because of the effects of slavery, that it was necessary to bring forward a reparation, because the quote unquote they hadn't been paid at all for. They received no recompense whatsoever. Now, you know, they don't. That's not explicitly true, because they were fed, they were housed. There could be an attachable value to that, regardless of the condition, right? But you don't have specific arguments, so it's really difficult to make that case. Other than you say, well, you're living in jail. That's not really living. It's fine. I'm not going to negatively argue that either. But when the United States passed civil rights legislation, particularly civil rights legislation in the 60s, the whole construct of welfare was done to ease the suffering of blacks that had been herded by largely democratic policies. The first public housing project in the United States was done by Minnesota, one of the most left-leaning, currently one of the most left-leaning states in the Union. And they packed in these people who had lived out in the country, and they packed them in so they could make services more readily available to them. And that's fine as long as the economy is good. You look at Detroit. Detroit was a bustling place until the riots, right, in the late 60s, 1968. And then it went into the crapper, and it really hasn't recovered. It was one of the most prosperous Midwestern cities in America. But when it went south, there was nothing for anybody to do. So people turned to a life of crime or whatever. People are going to do what they got to do to survive, right? I'm not knocking the desire to survive. It's one of the greatest instincts that human beings have, that all life has. All life wants to survive. People talk today about income inequality. Income inequality is because of systemic racism. Well, no, it's not. It can directly be traced back to the Great Society. From 1946 to 1972, there were gaps in income that were largely based on education and job experience. And whites, you can argue whites had more of that opportunity. And there were still racist policies. There was still Jim Crow after World War II, right, for a couple decades. And so you can make the argument, okay, well, the differences between whites and blacks, there was a gap. There was a gap between whites and Asians, whites and Hispanics. And there was conversely a gap between all of the different racial groups with respect to one another. But one thing that was curious, you can look this up, it's Bureau of Labor Statistics. You can look this up, but as the economy grew in the post-war effort, the income levels, real income levels of all racial groups increased by approximately the same rates. Now that's interesting, right? That's interesting because we talk about how income inequality is a 400-year head start for white people. But what we see in the disparate levels or the deltas between different racial groups really begins to take on a disproportionate or disparate curve with blacks. Hey, thanks very much. So with blacks and Hispanics becoming further separated from whites and from Asians. Curiously, Asians weren't as negatively affected by the Great Society as other persons of color. And you say, well, you know, the Great Society was passed in the mid-late 60s, and you really don't see this big giant problem until around 1972, 1975. And that's true, but how long does it take to implement programs? You know, the Congress passes a law and it creates a program to spend. There's time to wind it up. There's time to begin to get it out. You got to train people on it, and then you have to get it out into the field. So it's more like a slow bleed. And then what you see is that by the time a generation has passed, so call this the end of the 70s, so the people in the 60s have had their first round of kids, and it's now the early 70s. Oh, sorry, the early 80s. And the parents of the children in the 80s are born, in a lot of cases, to people that are getting the benefits from the Great Society, the welfare benefits, Medicare, Medicaid, not Medicare, Medicaid, and food stamps, and whatever other rental assistance, heat assistance. And there were conditions because the government, in its infinite wisdom, said, we don't want to be just giving anybody these things. You have to need them. And they would put out guidelines. And what happens whenever you create a set of rules? Somebody figures out how to take advantage of the rules. Okay, so they did. So under the plan, the old plans for welfare, you got paid a certain amount of money based on the number of children you had. And they didn't care if you had 1 kid, 2 kid, 3 kid, 10 kids, whatever. There was no limit. Eventually, they put a limit on it. You could have up to 10 kids. But what happened was that because now society began paying for or assisting, it wasn't really any kind of a life, but they provided this floor. I think liberal Cluck likes to say, well, we need society should provide a higher floor to existence. And the only thing that does is that just tells people, I can get away with this for nothing. But if I do $1 more than whatever this threshold minimum is, I lose everything. Or even to the extent that you begin to lose benefits based on a graduated scale. Like for every $3 you make, $1 will come off your benefits. As a means to try to wean people off, right? You don't want to pull the rug out from underneath them. You want to try to help them, right? You want to encourage work. But some people, and unfortunately, it is a number that grew over time, a lot of people decided that it was easier just to take the money and do nothing, and then to optimize around that suboptimal existence. And then you begin to see crime based on welfare begin to become established in the 80s. People would sell their food stamps for cigarettes. Or they would sell something, or they would buy something on food stamps, and they would turn around and sell it for cash money. or the fathers of children would oppressively abuse their women, because most of them weren't married, so they would abuse the mothers of their children, and they would take their money. They would force the women to convert their food stamps into cash. They would take the money and go do whatever they want, and the kids in those relationships were left to their own devices. So it's not a lot of difficulty trying to get to a point where you can understand, right, how desperation breeds a lot of not nice things to consider as an alternative to not being able to survive. So then we begin to see significant increases in crime. And the government, because politicians don't rarely get reelected if the cities are in turmoil, so they embark on pro police, pro criminal, harsh treatments. Right, the crime bill that Joe Biden was part of. Now I know this jumps forward a decade or so, but the crime bill that Joe Biden supported was instrumental in creating separations of people who were caught in this horrific situation. They were making bad choices, true, because the policies were telling them you couldn't do anything else if you wanted this money. But they weren't going to be satisfied with that. They just didn't have legal jobs. They began to run drugs. They ran criminal gang enterprises. And they got money, but it was all money off to the side. Meanwhile, the most vulnerable people, the children, were left to grow up in this horrific set of circumstances. It's essentially a war zone. The inner cities in the 70s and 80s and 90s were shitholes. But you can make an argument, to get back to this Marcus Dixon guy. You can make an argument that the government's attempts to right the wrongs of history, which included, excuse me one second. Which included the civil rights legislation, which included affirmative action, which included welfare, extension of welfare, paying the same amount for each kid, no matter how many kids you had. You can make the argument that this was all reparations, because the government was trying to help people who ostensibly were harmed through no fault of their own. But the insidious nature of what welfare is, in the way in which it was deployed, was that it began to sap and rob people of their own dignity. In the Great Depression, there was a program before welfare. Well, let's call it this. Before the WPA, which is the Works Public Administration, the government sought to hand out direct payments to people. It was a miserable failure, because the people at the time felt like if they weren't working, they couldn't accept the money, because it was charity from the government. And the vast majority of people in the country, even though the unemployment rate was near 25%, wouldn't take it. So the WPA was created, and they just made up jobs, street sweeping, right? Anything that allowed a person
men primarily, that would allow a man to expend labor and therefore feel like he earned something was available. And that was available to whites and blacks. It wasn't a whites only program. We'll talk about the historical issue of segregation and what Marcus Dixon wants to do with segregation today. It's an interesting flip reversal. But anyway, you know, the WPA begins to do some things. And there was a lot of infrastructure projects that came out of that. The Tennessee Valley Authority was all the road, the dam building and stuff like that. That was very useful because it brought electricity to more homes. It created growth opportunities. It created a lot of jobs, not just for white people. And these were skilled jobs. Not all construction work, right, is unskilled. You have to know something about grading concrete, about how to mix concrete. You know, the guy who's just digging the ditch, yeah, that's not skilled. That's just brute strength. I know. I did it. I built swimming pools when I first got out of high school. And I was that backhoe. But the war comes along. We send off a bunch of men to go to war. Left the women who suffered under very tough economic times because of rationing. Everything went to war material. And everything went to war material, and things were tough. I'll cut to the chase. The war ends. The United States is victorious. Europe and Asia are in a shambles. And everybody comes home. The economic boom that occurred for the United States after World War II was historic. And it was historic primarily because the United States, much like World War I before, but because of the advance of technology, the United States was largely untouched by the war, other than casualties of war. Our war factories had to gear up to produce material en masse. People were making airplanes. People were making airplanes, tanks, all kinds of weird stuff that was necessary to support the war effort. And then at the end of the war, we rebuilt through the Marshall Plan. Hey, Aviator, what's up? And I need to talk to you, by the way, about DCS. DCS flight panels. I got a couple panels over here, you'll notice. A couple panels. And I got my HOTAS. I need to talk to you about something else. We'll get, do something off to the side via Discord and get that thing running. I got some of the stuff working. I got some challenges with some of the stuff, and I get the concept of aviation, but clearly there's a lot of switches in a Mosquito. So I crash a lot. By the way, if you go to youtube.com/the more perfect union 4812, you can see what I'm talking about. So anyway, so we rebuild Europe. We rebuild Western Europe. The Soviet Union pillaged Eastern Europe. We rebuilt Japan, and this is in the 50s. And by the 70s, these new factories, everybody thinks that the Germans are such great engineers. They're very good engineers, okay? They were very good engineers during World War II as well. But the United States has pretty good engineers as well. What we had was a decaying infrastructure for factory manufacturing. And the best thing you can do to really improve your standard of living is to go through a total economic collapse because of war. I say that only mildly tongue-in-cheek. But the truth of the reality is that we essentially rebuilt our competition for the next 30 years. So in that post-war period, this real incomes increased because unit labor efficiencies went up across all economic strata, across all racial demographics. There were still gaps between blacks and whites, blacks and Asians, blacks and Hispanics, any race to any other race. There was some gap, but as the real wages increased, everybody generally increased at approximately the same rate, and that occurred until about 12 years after the Great Society. So when Marcus Dixon gets on Sonny Johnson, Sonny's Corner is the SiriusXM show. I recommend you go listen to it. I get about half of what she says, and then the other part, I just think it's almost like a gaslight. But this Marcus Dixon guy was saying, if you aren't for reparations, you are the problem. And I don't ever advocate violence unless there's no choice. And I just see that there's enough people in this country, and again, the vast majority of people in this country who have heritage going back before the Civil War. My family came here from Scotland in 1715. And they were poor farmers in the South who never owned slaves. The vast majority of people in this country didn't own slaves. But you're going to ask those people's descendants to pay taxes so that the people who claim they're a descendant of a slave can get some money. San Francisco City Council has said they're going to give every black person, I'm sure they're going to have to qualify, because $5 million times 80,000 or 50,000 is what, 25 billion, 2.5 trillion? What's the numbers on that? 5 million is 6 zeros plus 5 zeros. That's more than the budget of California. So there's going to be some qualifier, right? They're going to do some test. You're going to have to get a 23andMe, and you're going to have to figure out your percent of African Americanism. And the problem with that is that even if you could afford it, the valuation is ridiculous because you're equating the entire totality of the United States GDP, and then you're breaking it down in oddly enough, a socialistic way to say that I was one of X, therefore I get one of X percent of the entire output. And it subsumes away the ability to do any kind of other stuff. I mean, most of the labor was farm labor. Farm labor is the cheap labor. So they're trying to, Marcus Dixon is equating, or he's trying to say that the total value of the economic output from anything that had any input, that means the entirety of the textile trade, is a qualified net gain that they deserve a part of. But that's not how it works. If you make the wheel for an airplane, you don't get paid the value of a wheel to the airplane. You get paid for the fractional labor that you contributed. with union rules and things like that, you get healthcare benefits and blah, 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 time off, sick time, whatever. But you don't get paid an equal amount because the value of a thing is more than just the labor input. So Marcus Dixon is asking people to believe and subscribe to a notion of reparations for descendants of former slaves by people who weren't slaves. And it's a racist take. And he further goes into it and he says, well, they told Sherman as he was burning Atlanta down that they just wanted land and to be left the hell alone. Okay, so now he's arguing not only for reparations, give me my money, and then let me build my own city, let me hire my own doctors, let me hire my own education, and leave me alone. In essence, to create a black version of America for black people. And I don't know how you take the 14th Amendment, stand it on its head, and pull its head through its ass to contort the equal protection that it indicates is the law. And then you say, well, it's okay to have a black-only city. But assuming you could do that, what's to stop anybody who ever felt like they were mistreated by the government? I mean, I know we paid reparations for Japanese internment, but that was immediate and proximate to World War II. But 230 years later, or 150 years later, call it 150 years. But 150 years later, I think the liberals, they were all happy when latches was applied. To the Donald Trump case in 2020. All those cases got dismissed because, quote unquote, the filing was so late that it harmed the Biden camp, that it would have harmed them. Would it not therefore also harm all of the people, the non-POC people in America, who either didn't live here, didn't have descendants that lived here during the time in question, or never owned slaves? Would it not harm them to therefore say, now we're going to charge a tax that's going to pay back these people for things that you had nothing to do with? It's not your fault. And because welfare, affirmative action, Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, none of these things were enough. What promise, what assurance does anybody have that all of this stuff is going to be enough? And what prevents the next group? This next group who's aggrieved? Now, folks, I'm going to tell you right now, this has nothing to do with the ills of slavery. This is something that has been educated and indoctrinated into younger people under the age of 40 primarily. Anybody over the age of 40 that's arguing for reparations is trying to control a Marxist narrative into younger people. Because as Marcuse taught, you have to gain control of the media and the education so that you can indoctrinate enough young people in order to foment enough unrest in order to overthrow a capitalistic society. So when you hear anybody talking about reparations, or you hear anybody talking about rights for this, or climate justice, or economic justice, every problem is being looked at through the race, through a race class lens system. And it's pretty horrible. And I would love to talk to Sunny Johnson. I really would, because I think there's a lot of stuff that she does that's important. It's about trying to get people to see that what the Democratic Party teaches is about slavery. It's just a different kind of slavery. Who's gonna pay the reparations on the Democratic Party's initiatives that caused all these public housing nightmares to come into fruition? Smart people know the negative consequence that happened as a result of public housing. And I'll be honest, I don't think the Democratic Party did it because they wanted to harm anybody. I mean, slavery they wanted to do because, well, they owned them. And nobody wants to give up what they own, right? I'm going to keep mine. You go get yours. But public housing was something that they wanted to try to, they wanted to help people. But it became politically contorted. And that sad state of affairs is just simply, they sold them a lie. And they turned around afterward and they started campaigning on the lie. That it's necessary for you to keep voting for us because the other guy, he will, what did Joe Biden say? They'll put y'all back in chains. But the Democrats have put blacks and other people of color and disadvantaged people. They're disadvantaged because the government, with all of its power and resources, has chosen to keep people disadvantaged. Do you think that the government that can send Ukraine $200 billion in a year couldn't wipe out actual poverty? You can't make a horse drink once you've got him to the water. Oprah Winfrey, back in the 80s, she did a social experiment. She picked a number of people, and I'd have to go dig up all the details. But the long and the short of it was that she handpicked a small group of poor people. And she gave each of them $1 million, no strings attached. Go live your best life. And she tracked them. She ended the program after a period of time because the people who she had given this extra money to, or given all this money to, had not chosen to improve their lives. I mean, they materialistically improved their lives, but they didn't buy a house. They bought cars. They bought diamonds. They bought jewelry. They didn't go to school. They didn't get an education. They didn't continue to use the education that society already provides. They just had a better class of hovel. And she ended the program rather quietly. She made a big stink of it on her show. So I think the lesson out of that, right, is that it's difficult to change human nature, right? They say our personalities are developed with almost no flexibility. You become almost rigid in the way you think, or your personality, how you choose to respond to stimuli. is difficult to change after the age of 8 years old. Even though women's brains, I think, develop into their early 20s, men into their later 20s, right? You're still getting all your synapses together. Doesn't mean that women are dumber or smarter than boys or vice versa. I'm not making that argument. Just physiological. And the idea that you could take people who now have had multiple generations grow up under the rules of the Great Society, however noble the cause might have been, the intent might have been, you now have a couple of generations, and now we're into I think the fourth generation now of people that live in bad economic situations that are akin to combat. And a kid that I worked with, I say a kid, he's probably 15 years younger than I am. We worked at an ad agency in Atlanta. And I'm going to tell you what, this kid, this person, black guy, he was street thuggish, right? He knew how to get down. But he was intelligent. He was god awful smart, right? Much smarter than I am. And I consider myself to be a reasonably intelligent person. This guy was Einstein smart. For reference, he went to a technical college. He didn't go to a university. He went to a technical college, and he learned how to do computer programming and graphic design. And he combined those two things together. He made a side-scrolling game. You remember the original video games where everything was side-scrolling, right? And they'd fight, whatever. The artwork and the physics, he's taught himself this stuff from scratch. The artwork and the physics engine that he took advantage of before you had things like Unity was amazing. I said, dude, how did you get this smart? I guess, I don't know. I guess I was always able to figure it out. Is that when I was a kid, if you were seen in my neighborhood going to school with a backpack on full of school books, people in the neighborhood would kick your ass. I said, no, man, no. He said, yeah. I said, what the hell did you do? Couldn't possibly study all the time. He said, I did study all the time. My mom worked overtime and she bought a second set of books. And I kept the second set of books at home. He figured out how to get through his problem. Now, was his problem fair? No, of course not. Should any child have to be exposed to that kind of a situation in order to get an education? No. It's a travesty. But the reality of life is that it is a bit Lord of the Flies. And the people that are able to adapt and overcome and can think through things or be creative in the solution are the ones who get ahead. There are very few people, once they are generationally dependent on welfare, there are few people who break that mold. And it happens. And everybody stands up and they go, yeah, this is fantastic. You did great. Why can't other people do it? Because other people don't want to do it. And that's the sad fact. If making $1 million was so easy, there'd be a lot more people doing it. The truth of the matter is people make choices, and those choices always have consequences. And that's on top of the circumstances upon which we are born into. Not everybody is born in a rich, well-to-do family. Not everybody's last name is Obama or Bush or Clinton or Trump or DeSantis. That doesn't mean you have to subscribe to a life of abject failure. The society we live in, imperfect though it may be, still has opportunities for everyone to be more successful than their parents. The travesty that certain political parties will give to you. Hey, thanks for the follow there, Powerlifter Brett. Appreciate it. The problem is that in order to be successful, it can't just be because of the circumstances of your birth. If you are a failure, it is not solely because of the circumstances of your birth. It is attendant upon your parents to hold you accountable. It is attendant upon your parents to hold themselves accountable. It is attendant upon your parents to hold the people they entrust with you accountable. And that includes your school system. Not just the schools that pass students for social promotion, but pass students that are adequately prepared, educationally speaking, and sociological development that teaches people how to interact with each other in a civil way, and teaches respect for all of us, including those of us who look different, talk different, live in a different place, come from a different country, eat certain things, like certain people, love certain people. There is no reason that we have to dislike people who are trans. We can be okay with people who are trans so long as the way we treat them comports with what is allowed in the Constitution. The Constitution doesn't say anything about creating new genders. And gender identity and gender fluidity. And these things are just wedges that people use in order to get attention. And I personally don't care. Like Josie's trans. Josie's a nice person. I can have conversations with Josie. And we've debated on Dylan's panel a number of times. I've talked to Taftaj, right? I can have a discussion with anybody. Taftaj is, I think, conservative. Josie's pretty far left-winger. But we can have conversations. We can discuss things. We can behave toward each other in a civil manner. It doesn't require the federal government sticking its hand on the till of sociological conversation and discourse. I would no sooner treat Taftaj or Josie in a way different than I would treat my brother or sister. I wouldn't date either one of them, but that's just personal choice. And you know what? In America, we still have that to some degree. And my problem with all of this, realistically, is that the basis upon which the federal government has interjected itself into our lives is unconstitutional. And before people go out and say, well, you know, the Supreme Court. Yeah, the Supreme Court said that Dred Scott could be captured. Said that separate but equal was okay. By the way, if Marcus Dixon has his way, separate but equal will be okay for Marcus Dixon and the National NAACP. People can behave civilly towards one another. It is not the role of the federal government to be the nanny state. It's why we had a revolution, to prevent a government from being a nanny state, from dictating to us everything that would control our daily existence. And to be honest, our federal government, led by opportunistic politicians who don't care about you or I, who routinely trade on the knowledge that they have in front of them to enrich themselves. Mitch McConnell's been in politics for a long time. Mitch McConnell personally is worth $300 and change million. How do you think that happens? Liz Cheney didn't spend an awful lot of years in Congress. She's worth $6 million. And that money didn't come from Dick. People go to Washington and they become corrupted fairly easily because the lure of power, the prestige of importance, and the for a lot of younger people like AOC and some of these other clowns, the desire to be liked, to get clicks, and to do cute little TikTok dances and be on Among Us before the election in order to convince people, young people, to hate somebody else, in order to seek and capture power. We're in a bad way as a country because we are so diametrically opposed. And while I can compromise and I can find a consensus on how we can do things that are constitutional, what I can't do, what I won't do, is be okay compromising the basic principle that says our Constitution must be the foundational document that governs all that we do. And that any changes to that document have to be outlined and prescribed, or they have to be performed in a manner prescribed by that document. Because if we don't follow the Constitution, if it is not our bedrock foundational governing document, and that we simply just change our rules, our laws, to meet the whims of the time, then that document has no meaning, no bearing, and no ability to anchor the foundation of our country. Hey, I'll buy the what is it? The L30, L38. Yeah, sure, man. I'll buy that. I can buy that. And then that would actually be fun. I would love to see, just to kind of jump back on DCS for a second. Back in the day, near 20 years ago, Microsoft Game Studios or Microsoft Studios bought B-17. It was one of the first. It was going to be one of the first massive multiplayer World War II aircraft thing. 10 positions in the aircraft, and you could get 10 buddies and you could fly and everybody would do their thing, right? And you'd be part of, multiple planes, bombing runs, and all that other stuff. And Microsoft bought it and immediately killed it. It was so depressing for me. I would love to see it if DCS. If somebody would develop a DCS mod for the B-17, or even you even do the B-29, right? Just fly and drop the old bomb. But I watch on YouTube, I watch these guys called Grim Reapers. They do some seriously funky, cool stuff. Guys, I don't want to get all apeshit crazy over, the whole reparations thing. But this guy Marcus Dixon guy, he's an abject racist. And I would advise all of you that anybody who argues for reparations is being racist, because they're asking people not of a group, of a particular group, based on race, to pay money to people of another group based solely on race. And that's a 14th Amendment violation. It is unconstitutional, and it is a problem. Now, people feel really strongly about it. Get you 34 states. Do a constitutional convention. Narrow the scope. Otherwise, you'll be chasing this reparations thing down for every aggrieved group, whoever comes along. So, anyway. Dum. So, I want to do little bit of a brief recap, just some stuff. You guys, if you've seen my YouTube channel, youtube.com/ at the more perfect union 4812, I've done a couple of interviews. One is I'm really proud of, and it's getting some traction, is an interview I did for Daniel Kelly, who is a Wisconsin Supreme Court candidate. The Supreme Court in Wisconsin, like several other states, is an elected position. It's a 10-year position, so it sort of gets past the idea of the immediacy of a political party kind of a thing. It is supposed to be nonpartisan, so you don't run as a Democrat or Republican, but clearly there are ideologies. Dan Kelly is a man after my own heart. He is a serious constitutional conservative. You guys probably are aware of who Scott Presler is. Scott Presler was at a Tom Tiffany, who's a congressman, 3rd district congressman, not my congressman. He's a congressman 1 district over. But he was at a thing in Hudson, Wisconsin, which is about 15 minutes for me to get to. So I was up there, and I wanted to go up there because Scott Presler was going to be around, and I wanted to get an opportunity to meet him because I don't live near Destiny or these other guys, right? All these internet celebrities that people like to hang out with at twitch.com. TwitchCon. But anyway, so, I met the congressman, extended an offer to have him come on the show once a month. And I'm going to do this with a lot of local politicians around, right? Some school board people, county, city boards, and that kind of stuff. And the congressman as well. And then as I was walking by him, I bumped into Scott Presler. And I said, I listen to you. You do these Twitter live discussions. You get onto you're promoting a lot of conservatism and stuff like that. And I just want to let you know that because you have some reach, I did this interview with Dan Kelly, and he said, well, yeah, he was there promoting Dan Kelly. So it was serendipitous fate, right? So I said I would love to pick your brain about how you activate and organize and do what you do. He said, yeah, let's do it before April 4th. So I'm going to have an opportunity to speak to Scott Presler. We're working out details now, but I'm going to have an opportunity to speak with Scott Presler, maybe live, just depends. Maybe tomorrow. I don't know. I'm waiting for him to get back to me on it. But that'll be an interesting conversation because Scott he's not your prototypical conservative. And he's not, it's not there's another guy, Andrew Wilkow. He's a never Trumper, and he's a never DeSantis. And he says if you're in either of those two groups, he doesn't want to have anything to do with you. And I think that's literally the argument we need to take forward as conservatives, regardless of you're a hardcore constitutionalist or you're a middle of the road milquetoast conservative. You got to be tired of losing to the Democrats. And if Alvin Bragg can indict a ham sandwich, we need to be able to elect one. The consequences of Joe Biden or some other Democrat taking the White House, the consequences of the Senate, which would be very difficult for the Senate to retain its control. The map doesn't favor them very well. Oh, sorry. You're right. You're right, Buckeye. Different kind of ham sandwich. Maybe a turkey sandwich. I don't know. It's a good point, though. The consequences of the Senate's remaining in the hands that it is. I would have been okay with losing the House and taking the Senate, because in a divided House, it's more difficult. I don't know. It's probably better because if it can't get out of the House, it can't get out of the House. Nothing happens. The reason for the Senate is you want to control the narrative on what happens with SCOTUS. For no other reason. If you think about it, Merrick Garland not being allowed to become a Supreme Court justice was the best thing in the world. The only positive thing that really came out of the Senate in 2014. Period. So the consequences of not taking the Senate back and not getting a bigger majority in the House and not taking the White House in order of preference. No matter what happens, we have to have the Senate. We'll take the Senate and the House. It'd be great if we could get all three. But then conservatives have to stop sniping each other. They have to stop being like this idiot George Conway. Kellyanne Conway's husband. The original Never Trumper. Yeah, I have to get away from this BS mentality. You have to get away from people who work in opposition, who work for the president, yet work in opposition to the president. The people that say that, well, I stayed because I could limit the amount of damage. To me, that feels like that's illegal. You're given an order by the president to do something. If you don't want to do it, resign. You'll get your airplay. You'll get your 15 minutes of fame. You'll be able to write your book. You'll get on CNN. You'll get an MSNBC contract. You'll be a turncoat like Michael Steele, former RNC chair, who really is just milquetoast as hell. I mean, he might as well be a Democrat. Joe Scarborough. I guess, when you hang out with Zbigniew Brzezinski's daughter long enough, it kind of rubs off. The sad state of affairs that exist in political discourse, where politicians routinely trade on the fear of others rather than promote what is the purpose and authority that they have to be in office. Why they seek office. They don't seek office to make life better. And the Constitution isn't about operatively making someone's life better at the expense of someone else's. And that's what we have. It's what we have with what I perceive to be an unconstitutional application of the income tax. Everybody is not treated equally. Some people are treated differently because they make more money. Everybody should pay the same tax rate. Everybody should have the same exemption. Now, it might still work out that people at the lower end of the economic spectrum, depending on what the tax-free items are, okay, food, clothing, shelter, up to some nationally adjusted average, which includes all the money that rich people have for their primary residence. That's all, whoop, that's all free, right? All your milk, all your cookies, all your eggs, if you can get them at a discount store, which have been discontinued because they're too expensive because of Biden's inflation. But assuming all of those things are tax-free to you, you now have the ability to live. You now have that floor to an existence. And you can control what you get beyond that. And if you get into that situation where you're out of a job, or you lost your job, there's an economic downturn, and you need some help to get you bridged over, the government will, of course, provide that limited amount of help for you to get yourself back on your feet. And every other dollar that you make above that limit, you're going to pay rich and poor alike the same amount of percent tax, whether that's 10%, 15%, 30%, whatever the hell it is. Oh, and by the way, if you realize gains on your capital that you invest, it's all income. There's no differential. Capital gains is income, and it all pays the same rate. And what you'll end up with, if that happens, I don't have any illusions, but if it did happen, then the government, who routinely wants to today position an argument that creates class strife, says, poor people vote for me, I will make the rich pay, quote unquote, they always say this, begin to pay their fair share. They never define what a fair share is, but they just say, no matter what taxes you've ever collected, Donald Trump's tax cut in late 2017, 2019 saw the most income tax revenue ever generated in the history of the United States, despite giving those rich people all their money. Still got more money than at any time in the history of the United States. But it sort of counterbalances off, right, with the way that government spends money. I would say spends like a drunken sailor, but that's a pejorative against sailors or drunken sailors. But everybody pays the same rate. So when the government comes up and says, well, you know what, we want to create this new program. And recognize this, if the government of the United States is creating a new program, it is increasing its power over the public. So when the government creates a new program, they are taking away the liberty of the public. And now they're going to have to justify that. And maybe, just maybe, they'll cut some other program out that doesn't have any value, doesn't do anything, and they'll balance it out. Or at the very minimum, they have to come to the taxpayers and do a better job of selling what the benefit is to all of society. Hey, Jixer, how you doing, brother? Thanks for coming in. I think that would be wonderful. Don't you? Don't you guys think that a government that starts working for the people instead of working over the people would be a better way? I do. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. It's happened once, but then I found out later I was mistaken. Let's see if that conversation is still going on.
Positive to say.
Ooh, it's still going on.
But I was always supportive of Donald Trump, not because of all of his policies. Like I've been.
This is an argument that says,
I mean, he signed massive budgets.
Trump versus DeSantis. Who will win the GOP nomination?
With a very good friend of mine,
I think that's crazy. I think it's way too early. It's way too friggin' early to be trying to make that prognostication. I don't care who of them wins it or if somebody else wins it. I promise you this. I will put a picture of a turkey sandwich on whoever wins, and I will vote for the turkey sandwich, and I suggest all of you vote the turkey sandwich with me.
Policing everything. And it's a real problem. And it doesn't matter if it's Bill Clinton.
Dude, man, I'm sorry to hear. I'm sorry, Jixer, that you got the I'm sorry that you got the old jabby jab. I'm sorry that you got COVID. I had COVID back in October. 2.5 years. Yeah, me and the wife both got it. It's fun. It wasn't that bad. Paxlovid, you know, it is what it is. Dude, I'm seeing all these videos now where people that have taken the shots are right there on TV. All the news reporters that are like, falling off camera. Some lady, you know, news reporter just banged her head forward, flipped back. It's terrible. I mean, if it were comedy, it'd be funny, but it's just tragic. And I don't know if these people are dying or whatever, but they're certainly having some problems. Hey, Wobbly, what's up, brother, man? Good to see you. Good to see you in the old chat. Dude, I got 10 whole viewers right now. If I get just one more, I won't be a 10 viewer Andy tonight. I don't really care. Just being funny.
Let's not use the word establishment. But in terms of his comments about Ukraine,
there are people out there, man, that they seriously, they literally just want to churn and burn, because you know that's how they're going to get their money. They're going to try to pick us apart, subdivide us, carve us up, repackage us, and do some other crazy shit along the way. I'm not really gonna subscribe to it, even though I did ask to be part of the conversation. I think they're not going to do it. I think it's just really their own little echo chamber at the moment. But it's interesting. They got people on the right and the left on that, so it's actually pretty good. I listen to some of those things every once in a while. Anyway, so
I think that harms.
A little bit of local Wisconsin politics out here. So Wisconsin is a caucus state like Iowa, right? People think the Iowa caucuses, but there's a number of states that do caucuses. And the way it works is you've got a state party. You got the state party, you have county parties, and then you have a middle tier, which is called a district, which is made up of a number of counties. I think there's 20 or 26 counties, I'm sorry, in the 7th district, the 7th Republican district. It's not a congressional district, it's the 7th district of the Republican Party in Wisconsin. And they had a bunch of elections and stuff like that. And a couple, 3 weeks ago, I did the caucus for St. Croix County, which is the next county over to me, but they wanted me to come in. And I did a live stream, 6.5 hours of their caucus. I took a AV feed from their system, and I did a little bit. It's on Twitch, it's on YouTube for anybody that cares. But it was an educational experience to understand how the caucus thing went. One of the interesting things is that depending on the population size of the counties, there are a number of delegates, right? So you think it's kind of like a House of Representatives thing. When you get to caucus, though, the fewer people that go from that county, it increases the power by a factor of 1 over the number, right? So if you have, say, 10 delegates that can vote, each vote is, one vote. If you have 5 that go, each vote is 2 votes, right? So it's just kind of like proxy. It's like automated proxy voting. There were, in this caucus, there were 900 and some delegates potential. 136 went. And now these are the active people, right? These are the active people in state party politics. They're not Joe Schmoes sitting on the TV watching Vanderpump Rules. I'm ashamed that I can admit that, but the wife watches it. But anyway, so when they go in these votes, there's just very few votes can actually have a lot of power, right? So if you have the voting power of, and there was a couple candidates that only sent one delegate. So that person had the power of 19 votes. I personally think that that's a problem. I think it's a problem, but it's not my system. I just sort of moved in and I've inherited it. So it was an educational process for me at the county level. I tried to get in and live stream the district level, but there are two competing thoughts. So we know, we talk about people that are never Trumpers, right? Or never DeSantis, or never this, never that. At the national level. Well, in the party system, and if any of you guys have any experience in your own state, I'd be curious to hear what you've got to say about this. But there is, we talk about establishment politicians or establishment Republicans versus, Tea Party types or MAGA Republicans, right? And these two go at each other. And it was pretty evident from some feedback that I'm collecting now. I'm going to actually do a sit down with some people that were delegates that went sometime this week, and maybe next weekend I'll actually, bring it on the show. But these teams, they essentially go at and try to cancel each other, and it gets a little vitriolic. And I saw it's not in the stream, but at the St. Croix, and it's not in the stream I did for St. Croix County, but because there was a problem with their AV system not being able to send the feed. But in the St. Croix County party one, before just the 10 minutes or so before I actually start recording, there was an argument over the way the rules were going to work. And it was pretty vitriolic, back and forth, and what it came down to is that the guy who used to be the chairman for the party, the county party, lost to the guy who was the current party chairman, who subsequently said, "I'm only doing one term. I'm not going to run a second term." So another guy steps in, right? And he goes. So of all the people that were recommended to run, won. And there were people that challenged, and that's fine. It's always good to see that. Everybody did their nominating speech or whatever. But the fight over the way the rules was constructed was, to me, it was amateurish. And there were people that were just going, well, it's point of order, just point of order. They were using Robert's rules in a way that wasn't really Robert's rules. Now, it's been damn near 30 years since I've been in college. I was in the student senate. I was pretty good. I think I still am pretty good with Roberts. It just felt to me like people were making. You hear like people will do the debate things like when two parties are in a hearing on Congress in Congress, right? And they're going back and forth at each other, and you can tell that the purpose of the one party who's not in the majority is to do everything they can to obstruct or delay the meeting, and they do it by means of these point of order, question, parliamentary privilege, try to do privilege motions, anything they can do to prevent the thing from moving forward. And that's kind of what was actually going on at the county level. My understanding is that some of that actually carried forward into the district level. And I was privileged to help produce some material for the people that were running for district office. One of the 4 people actually secured their vote, so they won. The other 3 didn't. And it was pretty big difference. I mean, you were talking about 60-65% negative. You know, they're like anywhere from 28 to 32%, 39%, I think, was the number that people lost by. So there is a pretty strong, to hear some people talk. I don't know this. I don't know, again, a lot about Wisconsin politics, but there is a pretty strong, to hear some people talk about it, a pretty strong tendency for a group of people in leadership to want to do things that suppress expansion of party membership. You would think, right? Because membership is a price. There's a due that you pay, and that money does things, funds activities, either at the district, the county, the district, or state level, and then ultimately can funnel into national elections, or like congressional races. So money that's not spent on local stuff is voted on, and then they can give that to campaigns, or they give it to the state, and the state political apparatus can figure out, okay, well, we want to do something there, right? And the more people that you have, the more money you make. The more money you make, the more things you can do. And there is this competing these two competing ideologies. That one is, like I said, try to bring as many people in as you can, increase the transparency, do all these different things to bring awareness to process, so people can intelligently understand what's going on and what the potential impact is for them. And then this other side, which is what was thrown out in St. Croix County a couple of years ago, and they were able to withstand a challenge to reinstitute it a couple weeks ago, is this other side that says small numbers of parties, tightly controlled, gives us more power, more voice in the selection of people that we want to run, and they would back certain candidates. I think it's against the bylaws for the Republican Party of Wisconsin for any of the parties to promote candidates before primaries, but some of these counties are doing just that, and the state is, I think, taking a blind eye turn on it. I'm trying to get more information on that to confirm that for sure. So take what I say, like most everything I say, with a grain of salt. But the idea that a political party of any stripe would say that the key to success is limiting the number of people who have a say in what we do strikes me as a bit totalitarian and telling people that you can only vote for the guy we say you should vote for. It's kind of anti-democratic, in my opinion. I don't know what you guys think. Any of you other guys live in states that are primary, that are caucus? Jixer, there's something I wanted to talk to you about as well. Minnesota is trying to advance in the legislature this thing about affirmative care for trans children that some people are interpreting to be that it's going to allow the state to take children away from their parents, even if those children live in another state. Like, they can bring a child. They want to make what is the transsexual or trans sanctuary. That they want to make it so that if you bring your child, or if a child comes to Minnesota seeking some sort of gender affirming care, and the parents reject that notion, then the state will have the power via legislation to separate the parent and the child. And I find that ironic. given the immigration situation, things like that. So, I don't know if you're up on that or whatever, but I thought that was something that I would, if I had children in Minnesota, I'd get the hell out of Minnesota. It's pretty horrible. Man, oh man. Yeah, so just to recap a couple of things, and then we can talk about whatever else you guys want, but may have a bunch of interviews with local candidates for like school board. I'm going to bring some school board people in this week. Guys running for town council or town board chair. I think they do everything out here. It's less city council and more like a town board or city board. City council if it's a big city. If it's a town, it's a board of supervisors kind of a thing. People are running for various offices. I've done a campaign ad for one guy. Randy Lawson's a school board guy in Hudson. I did an ad for him. It's on his Facebook page. Hopefully he put he's got an Android phone, so he was taking a look at one link and it was a lower res. But it's just a quick short 30-second, I think 34-second little deal for him. It's great. You can do these things for people, put them up there. If you have the ability to help a conservative get elected, get them elected. Get them elected. The stakes are horrible. If it doesn't start going our way on a really consistent basis. And that means we need our politicians, once they're elected, to actually deliver and not be crazy. Oh my goodness gracious. So, let's see what else. What else is going on? I guess I could take a quick look at some news. I covered a lot of the stuff that I really wanted to talk about, but let's see. Did you guys watch Trump's thing in Waco, Texas? Everybody's making a big hullabaloo over the fact that he left Greg Abbott out of his recognitions. I don't know if there's some falling out there or not, or if Abbott's trying to, continue to keep getting elected. He thinks Trump's a problem. Okay, rough landing. Biden stalled pick to head turbulent FAA, makes remarkable decision. Stirring... Oh yeah, so his FAA guy withdrew he self-withdrew his nomination. Oh yay! This makes it one thing easier. You see where Trump was in Canada and he was, I think, addressing Parliament, and he said that China was good. That was interesting. Jeez, 20-year-old Lamborghini. It's pretty nice. What? Top Hollywood producer accused of lying about being a Native American. Was it Pocahontas? Heather Ray. Okay, we'll see. Oh, sorry. You know what? I could probably... Oh, we'll see. God only knows. God only knows, man. Hey, does this work still? Can you hear me? Can I hear me? Can I hear myself? I can hear myself. Yeah, you guys can still hear the music, hopefully. Yeah, great. Let's see. What do we got here? Let me see. Big. I gotta be able to read this mess, guys. I'm blind. Blind as a stinking bat. Okay. Let's see. Native American watchdog group, the Tribal Alliance Against Frauds, or TAF, recently demanded an apology from Heather Ray over lying about her background. The 56-year-old Ray, who serves the Academy Motion Pictures Indigenous Alliance, has previously stated she came from an Indian mother and a cowboy father, while several news outlets reported her as having a Cherokee parent. However, New York Post reported about recent claims by Native American activists that insists she is at best 1/24/8 Cherokee. That is, I think, 1/2 as much Cherokee as Liz Warren. No recognizable ancestors from anywhere. A divorce certificate in 1969 listed both of Ray's parents as white. That's sexy. Being an American Indian person is not just about who you claim to be, it's about who claims you. The Tribal Alliance Against Frauds. What is this? What's going on here? So, oh, somebody's just doing a text. Oh, never mind. I get it. And somebody like, I'm looking at my chat. Hey, Moshi. Well, yeah, we're all natives at this point, right? We're not indigenous. The closest connection Taft could recognize as a possible connection was her fourth great-grandparent, which would make her 1/2048 Cherokee. Prior to this allegation, Ray headed up the Sundance Institute's Native American program. What she identifies, right? I mean, you can identify. You identify as female. You can do that. If you identify as, I guess you can identify as a furry. So why can't they? Is it cultural appropriation? Her most recent film, Fancy Dance, was also funded by the Cherokee Nation and premiered at Sundance. The source connected with Illuminative. Oh, I see what they did there. Illuminative. They're going to be in the next Michael Crichton novel. Allegedly told the Post, it is important to note that the blood quantum minimums and citizenship requirements within the Native community continue to be sensitive and nuanced issue that has a dark and complicated history. Those within the Native community deserve the space and agency to have these conversations. Ooh, that just sounds like Marxism to me. Prior to the accusation, Native American community was rocked by another scandal. Activist Sacheen Littlefeather, oh, I remember that one, gained notoriety after rejecting Marlon Brando's Best Actor award. Had no Native American heritage. You guys remember her, right? That's the reason why he said he wasn't going to accept his Academy Award. After her death, her sisters Trudy Orlandi and Rosalind Cruz revealed the activist born Marie Louise Cruz was not ethnically Native American. According to Orlandi and Cruz, Littlefeather had changed her name after believing to find Native American heritage and became more active in protest. She was very pretty, though. Ray helped Academy members construct an apology to the activist for blacklisting her after her demonstration at the award ceremony. But she was a liar. She was like Rachel Dolezal, right? We got all these cultural appropriators out there doing stuff. It's great. Okay, so that's that. That's that little piece. What else? What else? Oh, okay. There's a restaurant getting ready to leave. Oh, Cracker Barrel. Oh, never mind. Cracker Barrel's for white people, don't you guys know? It's true. That's what they say. Yeah. DA reviews slew of charges after Creed actor allegedly grabbed a woman's neck. Yeah, okay. Spring breakers descend on Florida to dodge nearby mayhem and violence, and thousands of women sold into sex slavery, subjected to human rights horrors in the China Red Zone. I don't know exactly what that is, but oh yeah, that's what I want. Ooh, this is what I want right here. I'm gonna build this. I got a tree, and I'm gonna build this as a bench around it today. Oh, not today, but this spring. This is my spring project, just to have a nice little thing to sit around underneath, because that tree is starting to get big enough where you can actually do some shade stuff and read in the summertime. You guys don't really care about that, but I just figured, what the hell. Okay, let's see. Hey, let's dip back in.
And then, of course, these campaign donors, the establishment of the Republican Party.
Let's see.
called him up and told him, whoa, no. Like, you're not gonna get, you're not gonna mess up our foreign policy. You're not gonna campaign like this. All of a sudden, he puts his finger in the wind and switches back his position on Ukraine. So, I think some people on the stage were talking about it, but DeSantis has always been a very scripted,
it's much better.
Focus group tested, kind of go with the flow politician.
There we go.
And I think Trump is really shaking him up and giving him a run for his money. And I think ultimately, he's gonna get fucking embarrassed.
Let's see what we got here. Yeah, I got some people liking my stuff.
I was gonna have Doc jump in there, but he couldn't hear most of that, so I'm gonna go to Billy. I'm gonna let you respond to that.
You got me now.
Well. My good friend Liberal Cluck.
Can you respond?
Is he keeps trying to come on, but there's obviously I got some problems with Discord still. I've had a couple of tweets that have gone out, man, that have resulted in like more than 1,500 impressions. So, it helps to know people. Hey, I got 20 viewers. By the way, guys, if you are in fact new to the show, and let's see what we got here. Click. If you're new to the show and you like constitutional politics, you like discussions about what the role of the government should be, and you're not already a subscriber and you have a Prime Gaming subscription, please feel free to pull that on, to throw that our way, help us keep this thing going. I expend a lot of time and effort now going out and getting content that's local Wisconsin stuff, which may or may not appeal to the overall, to the broader market outside of Wisconsin. But it's time and effort and money that goes into that. So if you feel like throwing a bit or something my way, or a subscription, especially those Prime Gaming subscriptions, I mean, they're free if you happen to have it, right? And you haven't used it. If you find any value in the content, that's fine. I also have a Venmo thing. If you guys are interested on that, I'm going to create a link and like a thing you can scan with your phone, and you can donate that way as well. So all of that stuff goes into gas, equipment. Like I made about $2,000 doing some stuff for the county party here in the last week and a half, 2 weeks, and I put all of that into equipment. I have. I'll show you because I haven't taken the time to put this in, but I took a photo of it, which is cool. Let's see, there we go, and yeah, there we go. So you see right there, that's a mobile studio. That's everything needed to take the show on the road. And there's microphones, shotgun microphones, 6 cameras, all different kinds of stuff. Cables, power distribution, wireless network. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there to be able to do stuff. So I want to try to... My stated goal when I first wanted to get into streaming, and it was true when I was doing Facebook Live back before I got banned, was that I wanted to bring awareness to constitutionality, constructionism, original intent, and where we as a nation could get ourselves back into a good form, a good fit, by adhering to our constitutional documents, by going back to a more limited form of government, so that we could all have an opportunity to live a better life as our founding fathers would have envisioned it for all of us. They knew when they founded the country that it wasn't perfect. It could only be made more perfect through dedication, effort, zeal, and good moral beliefs. And while not every one of them was a Christian, not every one of them was religious, they believed that in order for the nation to succeed, it would have to be governed by people that were moral. And I use the phrase moral to indicate subservient to something beyond humanity. And that works, you know, if you believe in a higher power, if you believe that we transcend into a different state of consciousness when we pass away from the earth, or that there's something that happens to our essence, our energy, and then therefore we have to be good stewards of what we have. I think that's the kind of moral compass that the founders wanted people to aspire to. Whether they were able to do it consistently, or whether or not, whether they could do it or not at the time, their hope for the experiment was that as time progressed, we would get closer to that concept. And that's why I called the show The More Perfect Union. It isn't perfect. It's not perfect by a long stretch, but it can get there if we work together. If we take back education, that we make education something that doesn't indoctrinate, doesn't inculcate, but teaches how to reason and not repeat the pablum that some indoctrination wants to foist upon children. So, guys, if you like that sort of thing, then please do consider subscribing or otherwise chipping in and helping us out. And of course, I see content that I like, and I contribute to that content as well. Of course, in order to support a channel, you'd like to think that, well, the channel is going to be around. It's going to be doing things. It's going to be doing more deliverable content. And I have been fortunate enough to make some connections that are going to afford me the opportunity to be able to generate more content. And I'm going to try to be reaching out to other streamers and begin having conversations with them about collaborative events where we can, you know, co-host shows and things of that nature as well. The time for just talking about what needs to be done is coming to an end, and we are all in a position, or going to be in a position fairly quickly, that we need to begin the process of convincing those outside of the electronic sphere. Use the tools that we have to be able to do things, but certainly let's get what happened to my chat? Oh my goodness, my chat disappeared. Ah! It was around here. Oh, there it is. Oh, geez, there it is. It's so big. We need to be able to work together, and we need to support each other, and we need to convince the other side. Not that we're crazies, that people that happen to might sport a Make America Great Again hat or carry a Trump poster, they're not trying to retrograde America back into the days of slavery. When people tell you that that's just a Nazi thing or a racist thing, you need to seriously confront them. You need to confront them with the honest to God truth. If Trump is the biggest racist on the face of the earth, he's a really bad one. And whether you like the way he mechanically operates or not, you can't argue that real incomes went up for people of color. You can't argue against, well, you can't argue against, right? Can't argue against the fact that more women were employed. More women's incomes, real incomes, went up under Donald Trump. Before, this is all prior to the pandemic. The pandemic beat the hell out of everybody. Virtually every demographic improved their lives under Donald Trump. And it's only through the mischaracterization by the news media, by the people who had the most to lose, by the apple cart being upset, and by a party that saw its opportunity to have a lock iron grip on what you can do, what you're allowed to do in this country, that was being upset by the fact that this bull in a china shop came into power and immediately started doing things like reducing the federal registry. He was pulling down regulations that had no effect other than to cost businesses money and did not affect safety. And for the people that want to say that the thing that happened in Ohio was something that was manifest by the inability to put to mandate the safety brakes, the automatic pneumatic control or whatever, brakes, APS, I think they called it. That brake system on that train is what caused the East Palestine problem. It's just a lie. It's just an absolute lie. That failed because Norfolk Southern failed to do the proper maintenance. It was a wheel bearing. It wasn't a speed thing. And the train wouldn't have qualified for the rule, under the rule that they said was removed because of Donald Trump. That rule would not have prevented that train derailment because it wasn't a train of the class that was covered by the rule. So the left will come at you with every specious lie they possibly can. The Wisconsin Supreme Court race. Janet Protasewicz has said that she's criticized Daniel Kelly for being a public defender defending somebody accused of a pretty horrific crime, but he was in a public defender's office, and he handled, I think, according to Dan Kelly, he handled one or two pretrial motions, and then he left that firm, and he didn't have anything to do with the trial. His opponent, Janet Protasewicz, oddly enough, she believes that if you go to trial and you're convicted of a violent crime, you should serve little to no jail time. One person raped his 13-year-old cousin. He served no jail time. Or he served almost no jail time. 18 months or something like that. It was not remotely appropriate. Another case, a man was let out of, he got very little. Curious asparagus? Did I get that right? Thanks for the follow. Another person was convicted of a domestic battery case. He got, I think, no time, or he got, again, very little time. There's like 8 or 9 cases that are like this. If you go to justicedankelly.com, I think, there's a segment where they talk about all of her court cases. And she gave this person no significant penalty. He subsequently went free, and he killed the woman he had served time for battering. So domestic battery, goes to trial, gets let off with a slap on the wrist, subsequently finds himself in a position where he kills his original victim. But she has the gall to criticize him for providing what the Constitution guarantees all defendants, even though he really wasn't part of that case. Janet Protasewicz is a liar. Jixer says, best friend of 30 years told me friend of 35 years was in I-95 in the tunnel and found himself in the middle of a gang shootout. Jesus. He called the police while they were shooting and responded they will be gone by the time there. But by the time we get there, there's nothing we can do. Yeah, that's a travesty. Saying I-95 in the tunnel. Was he going to in what tunnel? Where in I-95? That's a pretty long road. Well, I mean, look, this is what they do, right? Alvin Bragg wants to go after Donald Trump out of a completely contrived legal theory when the feds and Bragg's predecessors said there's no case to be tried there. But he won't arrest violent criminals in the city of Manhattan, in the borough of Manhattan. What's that? What does that tell you? When you have these, these mass thievery events, it's like a flash mob, but it's a flash crook. You get a bunch of crooks walking into, high-end stores and they steal all the Birkin bags and blah, 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 blah. And nobody can do anything about it. I mean, I thought I saw something on one of the news sites today that somebody in a place shot an armed suspect and then they're facing murder charges. But I can't remember if it's I don't know if it's the one that was the guy that shot the guy in the back as he walked out. I thought it was something else, but where was it? We'll see if it happens to be, easy to yeah, I don't know exactly where it is, but it was interesting to see that one of the IOC things came out and said that transgender women were not going to be allowed in international competition. Feel pretty good about that. Jeez. Some weird people. New York City squatter threatens to flush remains of former tenant down a toilet in a housing spat with the former owner's daughter. Former tenant. I guess it's somebody was cremated and they're going to flush him down the old toilet. They said ashes to ashes, dust to dust, but not to the sewer. Do you guys remember what the hell was the Saturday Night Live episode where the girls, Mary Catherine, whatever her name was, she did this? Apparently, sniffing body odor from sweat could reduce social anxiety, according to new research. I'm so glad that the government is funding this stuff. It's great. Dude, this is just crazy stuff. Hey, if you haven't gotten your taxes in, you got like, 15, 16, 18 days, something like that? Do that. Lord. Yeah, okay. Well, that seems like that's pretty much all I had there. You guys got anything else you want to cover? Sorry for the female testicles. What? We're more interested in damaging our political opponents than doing actual. Yeah, I think politicians love having the issue. That's why immigration's not fixed, right? I mean, I think John McCain was one of the instrumental people to block that. He was also instrumental in preventing the Affordable Care Act from being actually finally killed, right? I think people they like having the issue to bitch about. They met a troll too. I feel like I'm gonna be scared, but thanks for following. I appreciate it. And that's for you. Yeah, superstar Mary Catherine. Yeah, Mary Catherine Gallagher. right? But apparently, if you smell your pits and you have social anxiety, you can avoid, you can get over the social anxiety. But the problem is that if people see you in public, it's not going to work. It's going to have an unintended consequence, and you're going to have more anxiety because people have seen you trying to relieve your own anxiety. I just think it's kind of a problem. Goofy for Jesus, what's up, dear? How are you? I love trolls. Their purple hair waits me when it bingo. Yes, that's the only kind of troll that you should tolerate. That is a fair statement. Or the ones that go on the end of your pencil. Are those things from high school, grade school? High school? Girls in high school. Boys, we didn't do it. We were playing football. It takes a hot minute to get the platform together. Oh, that's my writing. I thought it looked pretty good. Yes, long time no see. I'm so glad to see some of my friends and my streaming buddies out here. Wobbly, I've been watching your show more in the mornings too, by the way. I do appreciate it. You, one of the most even-keeled cats on any social media platform. You're an inspiration. Yeah. Well, somebody's finding out that's not good, right? Gwyneth Paltrow, she's doing her little ski thing, her ski trial. I guess she ran into somebody, mowed somebody over, and they wanted to bring in some interview she did on, I think it was Fallon, maybe. And she said that, yeah, I'm clumsy. I run into shit all the time. And then in court she says that she's always on top of things. She never makes mistakes and blah 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 blah. But they said, well, you want to pull this in, and the judge says, well, why is that relevant? She says, because she says in the trial that she's not a klutz. I'm paraphrasing. But she says in this interview that she's a klutz and she runs into things all the time. That's exactly what she did in this case. So yeah, that's kind of entertaining. Is that how they are marinated? Yeah. Oh, well, I don't know. Maybe. Yeah. Okay. Dum. So, my friends, what time? We've been doing this for, I don't know, 2 hours and 12 minutes. I feel like I need, does anybody want to help me test Discord just briefly? See if I've actually worked it out. I probably haven't, but I could use a victim. I mean, a helper. It's hard, man. This stuff is hard. Let's see what I got here. At least the music's, pretty consistent. Let's see. Main stereo, the input device. Let's make that chat. Check 1 2. Check 1 2 3. Oh, is she the one that got hit? Because it seemed like the I don't know if it was the defendant or whatever. Was she suing or is she being sued? Because the way that the argument went, as I heard it from the news recap, was that she supposedly did the running into. But I don't know. See if anybody's interested in coming into the old Discord. I can't guarantee it's going to work, but what the hell? We'll try. Click. What? Here we are. Okay, can you guys hear Buckeye? Oh, that's just crazy. I can hear you. What's your problem? Okay. Let me change me output here and see if that works. Yeah. I run all my audio through a Rodecaster Pro. So let me see if I can just put that in the old check. Okay, say something. What? Yeah, you kind of sound like crap. That's interesting. Can you guys hear him there? I can't hear him according to Goofy. Okay, well, it's just kind of... Yeah, I need to spend some more time working on it. Check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, well, yeah, you can hear me in Discord for sure. Dude, what the hell is that crazy sound? Let me, yeah, hang on. Let me see if this is... Yeah, we'll see. Check 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's see. Yeah, you should be able to hear me. I wonder if anybody can hear you. I don't think so. Probably not. Okay, so... Yep, that's true. Yep, let me see. This be chat, custom. One, two, three, 1, 2, 3. So should be able to hear. Say something, if you would. So people can hear music, right? Can you guys hear music? No, it's faint. It's yeah. Yep. Okay, so that's that. Okay, let's see what's in the main. Main. Ah.
Yes, Gary. Oh, I heard myself.
When? Do you hear yourself now?
Hold on, Bubby. I do hear myself now.
Okay, so you guys can hear him now, correct? Okay, so now people can hear you. Yay! People can hear. It's success. It's all routing. So every once in a while, Roadcaster guys, they put out a firmware update, and you have to almost go back to the drawing board how you can configure stuff. So anyway,
yes.
So I don't want to keep you from doing anything that you got to be doing, because I appreciate you coming on and helping me test. But it's been so long since you and I have talked. How are things going? What have you been up to?
Let's see here. Still in school. I took political parties and American constitutional politics this semester.
Good job.
So those have been some interesting classes. I got accepted to the educational cohort, so I'm officially on, my degree program to get my bachelor's, which I don't know how they did it when you went in, but basically I've gotten approved to follow the what's the word I'm looking for? Their prescribed courses, right? So like there's classes in the fall and in upcoming spring that I wouldn't be able to take if I wasn't accepted. So I got all the test scores I needed to get and all that good stuff. So
that's fantastic, man. That is just awesome. I know you've been working your tail off for all that stuff, and it's not easy, right? When you're also a caregiver for a small child. So kudos to you, brother.
Thanks.
How old is he now?
Kid Gary is going to be 7 in September.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
He's getting tested for superior cognitive here soon.
So as long as it's not an air of superiority, right? I think that'll be great.
Yeah. Yeah, he got tested last year for accelerated math, but he didn't score high enough. And then this year they're saying that his cognitive is up there, so they're going to test him to see if he's gifted in superior cognitive.
Dude, that's awesome, man.
Yeah, so he's doing really good. And then Karina starts school in the fall, and so my schedule will get a little bit better. But yeah, we're doing as good as we can.
Are you streaming much?
No, I've not been able to stream regularly. I've gotten on there last, a couple times in the last week, but yeah, because so this semester I had a placement in a middle school, and I was going 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So I was there like 6-7 hours a day.
Yeah.
And so I needed to get 100 hours total for the semester. Well, I went ahead and met that, so I don't have to go there anymore. So I'm only going to go there once a week now, and it's just because I kind of want to see how the kids progress and how they finish out the school year. So I'll have like Mondays and Wednesday mornings all to myself to either get some streaming in or catch up on some school. These political science classes I'm doing. A lot of writing, and it's a lot of writing about his lecture. So you sit in lecture, and then you have to go back and review his lecture, and then you have to write about his lecture and compare and contrast things in his lecture. And yeah, so I'm so glad that I had the last 2 semesters of research writing and stuff to get used to all the writing that this class is having me do.
Nice.
So, but it's interesting. I learned. I mean, listen. How many times do we talk about the 10th Amendment? Right? we're always going to the 10th Amendment and saying that's a 10th Amendment issue. That's a 10th Amendment issue.
It's a whole argument for states' rights,
right? Right. This semester, he started talking about the 9th Amendment, and I was like, the 9th Amendment.
Yeah,
what's the 9th Amendment say?
It's the 10th Amendment for people.
Pretty much. So, so I read the 9th Amendment, and he said, this is what it says, and I'm like, that's not what it says. And I read it again, and went on to a website, and they said that basically what he was saying. I was like, no, that's not what it says. So I read it again, and then I was like, okay, maybe, but no, I don't see that. So I must have went through it 4 or 5 times, right? There it is, right? And the 9th Amendment says, the enumeration of the Constitution, in the Constitution, right? In the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. He says, right?
It's a limitation on the government.
That the general interpretation of this is that although there are rights that are enumerated, don't think that there aren't rights that don't exist because they're not enumerated.
Correct.
Right?
Right.
And so
I think the thing that politicians, right, will tell you is that you have no rights except that which the government gives you, right? This is the exact opposite of that. This says the Constitution, and this is where a lot of people, we talk about enumerated powers and what that does with respect to the 10th Amendment, but it applies equally to people. That which is not specifically enumerated in the government is not an obstacle to any other right that you have, whether it's natural right or by legislative action, right? Yeah. The government can create the ability or the permission to do things that people have falsely interpreted as a right, but the government doesn't give you rights. The government, government is enumerated or limited in what it can do to you and to the states by the enumeration specifically derived in the Constitution.
Yes, you can get a bottle of water. Get it.
Oh yeah, I'll get a bottle of water.
So, but yeah, so and it was just once I, read it 4 or 5 times, and then I saw it, I was like, wow, this is such a powerful amendment, and it is so rarely used to support anything.
In some ways, it's more relevant to individual liberty than the 10th Amendment is to the states, right? The 10th Amendment is that which affords freedom to be sovereign, somewhat sovereign, to the states, right? But the most of the power, and I think this is my personal opinion, is I think why the 9th Amendment is before the 10th is because everybody thought, the founders thought, or the people that argued for the Bill of Rights, thought that it was more important that from an appearance perspective and from a delineation of law perspective, that the people were in front of all other forms of government.
Yes. Well, and it was Madison who came up with the Bill of Rights, and he did that, of course, after the Constitution was ratified. He came up with the Bill of Rights after he listened to, there was an argument by someone. Oh Lord! And see, if I didn't need the name, I'd have the name in my head, but I can't think of the name right now.
That's the way it always works. Hey, while you're thinking about that, I just want to say thanks, critically thinking veteran, for the follow. It's been a long time. Glad to see you're out there still doing stuff.
Let's see if I can see this real quick. There's political parties. It wasn't political parties.
Guys, if you want to be part of any kind of a constitutional conversation, or you want to just jump in, now that Discord works for everybody, you're welcome to click in and join.
But yeah, so there was writs of something.
Habeas corpus?
No. Writ of there was an English or British lawyer that had been the attorney general, and they wanted him to argue these writs where they were Great Britain was pushing on to the colonies a more searching, right? Instead of passing taxes, they were cutting down on the black marketing. So they had done these writs that allowed the constables and stuff like that to search and push it out more. And where are my notes on this? I promise I wrote something on this.
Writs of assistance is what you're talking about.
Writs of what?
Writs of assistance.
It might have been writ. Yeah,
you were compelled.
It might have been writs of. Yeah,
you were
Otis and writs of
government.
assistance. Yes,
right. You were compelled by the government to support the government.
So he went and listened to Otis argue this, right? And Otis, this is where they say that Madison first heard inalienable rights was when Otis was arguing it in court. So it's real interesting, the history of how the Bill of Rights even came to be, with Madison saying, hey, we left some stuff out of this Constitution. So
yeah, that was necessary. And one of the great experiments, right, in democracy was like the whole Federalist Papers, that whole series of discourse back and forth over the merits of the various parts of the Constitution, the various parts of the Bill of Rights. And yeah, I mean, nowadays you could never, I don't think you could ever do something like that today, because there wouldn't be, and the way that they argued, they didn't tear each other apart. They tore the ideas apart, which is where the discourse really should lie. Today, we just, we try to make an attempt to denigrate the individual to undercut any believability. We don't attack the idea, but we attack the person And because we do it that way, it makes the idea circumscribed.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I'm learning a lot and putting things together and it's. I mean, a lot of people are like CTV the other night was talking to somebody online and they were talking like constitutional stuff and politics stuff, since you brought it, since CTV's out there, and he's like, politics are boring, and they went on to another conversation. It's like, yeah, but that's why we need to have conversations on it even more and have it try to make it interesting so that people understand where it came from and how it started, and the fact that we are the only nation on earth that has rights that are protected by the people that were given to, or not given to us, but what's the word I'm looking for?
Well, we
identified and secured by the people, because in Great Britain, right, they have their Bill of Rights is something else, but it was something that Parliament came up with, and Parliament alone can change those at any point in time. But in order for ours to get changed, right, the convention has to be called, and who goes to the convention? It's not our legislative branch.
Right.
It's people that we vote to go to that, that convention. The people choose who goes to that convention and makes the changes to the rights that we ourselves say that are protected.
Right.
So that's why, when you talk about the sovereignty, who's the sovereign of the United States?
The citizen.
The people are, because we've secured that in the Constitution.
We delegated, we enumerated the power for the federal government from the power of the people. The people inherited their power from God, or from the Creator, right? There were the vast majority of people that signed the founding documents and fought in the Revolution were religious. There were some people who were, agnostic or even atheist, but they all believed that there had to be a higher power which afforded the rights to begin with, and that we, as Jefferson said, that the rights or governments are instituted among men to protect and preserve those rights. Right, because left to our own devices, human beings are pretty bad. So we put guardrails up in the form of government to be able to regulate or control the reach of government for the betterment of the freedom of the people under the governed, right? And that government is instituted by, for, and of the people, so that those freedoms should always be protected. And we've gotten so far away from that, particularly since 1900 with the growth of the administrative state, right? We've gotten past the concept of enumerated rights, and now we talk about substantive rights, and substantive rights are almost exclusively interpreted through some action of the federal judiciary. And as we've seen, the federal government, the federal judiciary has gotten it wrong a lot, right? Dred Scott, I'd almost argue that Marbury versus Madison's a problem, right? Because the government, if a branch of government says that they are the final authority on that, and they simply say, well, we interpret it this way, then that was the first crack in the armor of original intent. I think personally, my belief, and people like Daniel Kelly, who's running for Wisconsin State Supreme Court, on April 4th is the election date in Wisconsin. He believes, I believe, that the words in the Constitution had meaning. They had specific meaning at the time it was adopted, and that any change to either the meaning or the word requires an Article 5 action. And you mentioned the Constitutional Convention. That's one of the two ways you can do it. The other way is that you get 2/3 majorities in the House and Senate, and the president signs it, and then it goes out for a 3/4 states ratification, right? So the first part's the convention. After the convention, which only takes, by the way, 34 states. 34 states out of 50 have their legislatures sign a petition or pass a petition that says you want a constitutional convention. That's delivered to the Congress, given to the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives therefore then is required by the Constitution to call a convention of states. And then at that point, the states put their own delegations forward, right? And it's not, nobody in the federal government is allowed to participate in that. No elected official. And then the other piece, right? The easier one, at least from a passage perspective, is the regular amendments process, which goes through the House and the Senate and approved by the White House and then sent to the states for ratification. It's a difficult process to do, and the founders intended it for it to be a difficult process because they wanted to avoid rule by whim, by taciturn changes in the way the government operates based on some prevailing wind or fancy at the time. They wanted it to be, anything that was passed had to be substantive, overwhelming consensus, and that would hopefully run to the betterment of society. A couple of times they've gotten it wrong, right? They got it wrong with prohibition. And I think the 25th Amendment's a little suspect, but I mean, it is what it is, right? Like I told somebody the other day, and I tell people regularly, if you want the sky to be purple in America, you can just get a constitutional amendment. If you can get, 2/3 of both houses, the president, and 38 states to say that the sky is purple, you can, by operation of law in the Constitution, say that it is legally purple. But it's difficult to do because it's difficult to get that many people, that many states in concert with each other. So what we have done predominantly since 1900 is that we have used the administrative state to do things. Congress has passed laws and enabled the executive to take on responsibilities that used to be the responsibility of Congress. And by doing so, they've empowered the administrative state to become bigger and bigger. It gets more expensive to run. And then politicians, being the corrupt bags of crap that they generally are, over time, if you're in politics long enough, you can't not be corrupt. I'm sorry. I just don't believe that you can not be corrupt and be in politics for more than 2 years. Okay? But then they start working. They work for their own benefit, and they stop working for the benefit of the people that elected them. And I see this. I saw this operation firsthand with state political parties in Wisconsin. I found it troubling that a party that was supposed to be for the Constitution and for individual liberty was being controlled by people in some cases that really wanted to, they didn't want more members. They didn't want open and transparent meetings. They wanted to have as few members as possible in order to concentrate the most power in their little fiefdom in the smallest number of hands, so that they could tell the rest of the people in their county who they were going to vote for. To me, I found that troubling, right? Because it has the chilling effect of squashing discourse. Maybe somebody else has a better idea, but it's not the same as the way that the party leadership thinks. So the party leadership says that we're not going to support that person. He's not our kind of person. And to me, that's like antithetical to what Brandeis said, which is bring every idea forward. Let them all be exposed to sunlight, right? Paraphrasing. But let the best ideas survive scrutiny. And when you can survive scrutiny, it's probably an okay idea. At least it's subject to the people having had a say in the process, earlier and earlier in the process, rather than, oh, okay, well, your primary is this. These are the guys you get to choose from. These are the people you get to choose from. So boom, here you go. I'm just not a fan, not a fan of that sort of closed loop, right? I think it's more echo chamber than anything else.
Oh, for sure.
So I'm glad that you have been productive with your time, man. So how much time do you have left?
I've got 2 years left still.
Woo, Lord have mercy.
Yeah.
I graduated in 3.5 years, but I didn't have little ones. I was divorced at the time. I was paying child support, which was massive at the time. I was paying $800 a month for one child in 1992.
Jeez,
that's massive. My ex-wife. Okay, I'll give you the small rundown. This is my divorce, my marriage and divorce in 30 seconds. My ex-wife found 3 people she wanted to sleep with more than me in 30 days, and we got divorced. I said I gotta have a female attorney because I have a daughter and I was fighting for custody, and so I got a female attorney. My ex-wife's mother got a female attorney as well, but she was a substitute judge on the child court for the same city.
Oh Lord!
So we went to court. My attorney was a clown, and unironically, she became a comedian on a cruise ship after my case. Like literally, she left the practice of law. So when I say I had a circus clown for a divorce attorney, I was not wrong. I was not off by too much. But anyway, I went to college. So for me to go to college was very expensive. I worked multiple jobs because I had to pay so much in child support, and I got through in 3.5 years with almost 2 majors and 2 minors, and it was hard. It was a hard slog. So I'm definitely empathetic for anybody that has the difficulties of trying to raise a family or pay for a family to be raised while they're doing an education. So kudos to you for that. You're to be congratulated, and your kids are going to be the beneficiaries of that outcome. So
we can only hope.
Well, all you can do is try. You can try to be the best parent you can, and you can do all you can to put your kids on the right path forward, right? But you can't make the horse drink from the well.
Nope.
So you can only try to do your best, and then you kick them out. You like the bird, you kick them out of the nest, and hopefully they can fly, or at least flap hard enough to to break the fall.
Right. Yeah. So, but I mean, 2 years, I could probably, because I don't know. Well, no, they're pretty full years too, because I was student teaching and all that stuff. But the whole thing, like everybody's like, man, you got 2 years left. I'm like, dude, I don't care. I get paid to go to school. I get money to be here.
Yeah, I mean, if I could get paid to, like, if I could, get somebody to give me like a grant, and I could just go back and do like political economy, man, I'd be happier to pig and crap. I would just, because that's my shtick, right? I love political economy, and I have a degree in economics, so it's not like it's not that foreign. One of my my poli-sci teacher in college, he was like, I won't say the original constitutionalist because those guys are long since dead, but this dude, he got it. He was as hardcore libertarian, minarchist, constitutional guy, right? And I wasn't really political before I went to college, but I sat in this guy's intro poli-sci class as a freshman, and I was just like, yeah, there's just something that totally makes sense about what he's saying and the way that he's saying it. And then my college, what do you call those things? Faculty advisor was a labor economist. So she was as far left as you could possibly get. But every other economist in the department was a really conservative supply side kind of a person, right? So I got a lot of competing thoughts and ideas. Right. So I wasn't inculcated one way or the other. So I had an opportunity to be exposed to a lot of different ideas. Matter of fact, I wrote a lot of case studies on labor economics, like the IBP meat packers kind of problems that existed in the 70s. I did a bunch of research on like how stagflation, what actually happened during stagflation, and how the energy crisis and the lack of ability to respond by the U.S. government, the government's monetary policy actually created that problem, and how it was really just a big giant failure of leadership under the Carter administration that really allowed a lot of that to take place. And I went back and forth with my faculty advisor because she didn't like my assertions. She said, "Well, it's because capitalism's bad." I said, "No, any system that you can do can be bad. It can be more bad than it can be good. Whatever you think the good can come out of, say, socialistic policy, right? If the people who are running that particular system have ill intent, or they're trying to feather their own nest, which is what we see in most political parties, most political systems, is that the people at the top usually feather their own nest at the expense of everybody else. So it makes whatever platform, whatever mechanism is suspect. The thing that makes America different is that theoretically, right, we have a constitution which is supposed to limit the amount of that kind of crap that can happen. And we just have allowed ourselves to sort of get a little far afield of how we manage and control that, right? I think it's maybe a multi-generational, but certainly at least a generational push to put that seesaw back kind of into the middle, to bring it back to balance, as Obi-Wan would say.
Yeah. Do we really want to go on Obi-Wan's judgment though? Because he said that.
Are we talking about Alec Guinness or which Obi-Wan?
That?
Which Obi-Wan are we talking about? Are we talking about Ewan McGregor?
The Obi-Wan that said that Anakin was what did he say? Anakin was doggone it. Can't think of what he said about Anakin.
You'd have to rein me into the movies, right? Because there's multiple versions of both. So was it the newer set or the old set?
The newer set where he's they're talking about Anakin.
It's too emotional.
Obi-Wan is pushing for Anakin to be trained as a Jedi, even though he's quote unquote too old.
Too old, yes.
And he says that something. He's like he's gonna change things or something. And it was like, yeah, you did.
Yeah, Don Lemon would say he's past his prime. He's 11. He's past his prime. Just Google it. Google it. Google.
I love how he said that. Just Google it. It's in Google. Google knows all. So, but yeah, so I'm learning a lot and trying to make it all make sense.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear it, man.
I taught a class. As a matter of fact, I did an introduction to economics for my placement this past week, which I don't know. So I'm in a 6th grade class, social studies class, and my whole purpose is just to basically observe, right? The purpose of this class is to see if I like, what teachers do on a daily basis. So I'm supposed to observe and wait a
second. This is block teaching. So you're
no. This isn't student teaching. This is just it's a second part to a what was that? Psychology. Education or psychology and education or something like that, right?
Okay.
So
you're sitting in a class, a 6th grade classroom with 6th grade kids observing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm supposed to, observe and watch what the teacher does and see how I like it and kind of, participate a little bit here and there, right? And then they have me there was 2 lessons that I had to give, and the first lesson I can't remember Oh, first lesson, all I did was read out of the book for the beginning of the ancient China chapter on the Terracotta Army and have a discussion about that. And then the second one was their introduction to economics, where I had to,
Oh, I'm forgetting. Yeah, 6th grade social studies is pretty broad.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we talked about, the key words, and I gave him the definition of economics, and I talked to him about, I gave him some examples of what it was. But I'm going through these classes, and I'll be honest with you, the 2 classes that I taught, I didn't see my co-teacher doing anything like that. Every other day that I was in there, he would be like, he'd have a list of things for them to do on the board, and the majority of it was doing stuff on their computers. And I never saw him once discuss, any of the areas with the kids.
Okay.
And I'm like, where's
the educational value?
Huh?
Where's the educational value?
What do you mean, of having a discussion, or the educational value of doing the stuff in the computer?
Well, no, I mean, yeah, there's an educational value, but I think there's more value, right, in discussing back and forth and soliciting the ideas or the thoughts from the student, and then talking through them, the ideas in the process, right? Because you read something, and if nobody questions you or tries to pull out of you what the comprehension is, you might walk away from whatever that is that you were doing thinking something that might be completely off base.
Right.
And I think think teachers have a responsibility to not just foist the information out for the child, assuming that, say, a piece of information that a teacher gives is completely accurate. But if you don't have a way of engaging with the student to determine that comprehension while you're doing it, you wait till the test, right? Tests are the notorious measure by which we gauge comprehension, right? And knowledge retention. But a good teacher is constantly working with their student the whole way through the process, right? So it's like it's in education, right? The whole precept upon precept, everything is foundational to the next thing. Right. And you get to the end of it, and it's not like it was that difficult to learn, but you'd have now this insight over whatever the subject matter is that you were covering.
Yeah. The whole class, I'm like, they were just guessing at answers. And then, like, he had me grade, one of the first things I did, I graded one of their, like, end of lesson, question things that they did. And there was papers that were turned in that were upside down, that put the holes on the right hand side, that didn't have their names written on them, that were written in marker. One was written in highlighter. And I'm like, where is the teaching them how to present, give a final product that's presentable. 6th grade, I don't think I ever wrote, in marker in 6th grade.
No, got it.
Why?
I don't think I was in junior high school before they would let us use pens. Everything was a pencil. Right?
And I get that they're not teaching cursive. Okay. But the writing that they're putting on the page isn't even legible sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
It's like, what are we doing here?
Well, penmanship matters, and I'll be honest, I have horrible handwriting, because, and it's not like we got graded on penmanship. I always got like a C, because they could read it, they could see it. I don't know. But it's not great, and my cursive is just atrocious. But
we're just talking about printing stuff.
I can do it. But yeah, printing for sure. Everybody should know how to print. Everybody should know how to print.
They couldn't even stay within the lines when they were writing. It was like they would take up 3 and 4 lines.
As a 6th grader.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I mean, when I was in 6th grade, I could stay in the line. Right. I
then,
wrote on the line.
and then they have this session. It's called intervention, right? So they just recently, before 3 weeks ago, their intervention class, it was basically like a study hall, and they would come in and he would say, this is what you have to do for math. This is what you have to do for science. This is what you have to do for language arts. And it was all IXL stuff that was on the computer, all computer-based stuff. So I'm going through, and these kids are just, instead of knowing, learning, wanting to learn the answers, they're just guessing until they get it right and then go on to the next one. And so they changed it, and now 2 days out of the week they have language arts focused. 1 day out of the week is open, and then 2 days out of the week, Thursday and Friday, are math. Right, math focused. So when it was math focused, I was like, hey, this is my thing, right? Let's get it. And I'm sitting there going around trying to help the students, and I'm like looking at their answers, and I'm doing it in my head. I'm like, that's not right. How'd you get that? And they're like, I don't know. And they're all trying to do, like, none of them 30, well, probably 25 students in the class now. None out of those students, none of them have like a scratch paper to write out, what they're doing. They're all trying to do it in their head. And I'm like, get away from trying to do that mental math. Mental math will come, it's great to practice, but it's not the end all be all. You need to write stuff down so that the teacher that is here can see what you've done and figure out how, what you've done wrong. Yeah. And I just couldn't believe
college, it. Yeah. Even in college, when I was doing economics, right, you could, and one of my math econ professor, which is some horrible math, by the way, my math econ professor, he taught out of the same notebook he had as a grad student. And the only way you could pass that course was to memorize it, but you also had to memorize how you did the work, because you had to, you couldn't get away with just saying that the answer is 3. It's like, it didn't matter if the answer was right if you couldn't show how you got it there. And all through school, grade school, middle school, high school, if there was anything that was related to math or logic, you had to show the breakdown of how you got there. You had to construct a series of events, right?
You got to show your work. I don't know. And that's what's driving me nuts. I'm like, what happened here? Is this an issue of COVID learning, sure, where they did it all on the computer and, they just guessed or what, but they can't write. They don't want to read. And they can't do, they don't know how to, put their ideas on paper. I was like, it's nuts. Absolutely nuts. So
when I first found out that was exposed to the idea that you wanted to be a teacher, I was thinking, dear God, what is this man doing to himself? But as I get more and more into trying to maintain or keep an understanding about what's going on in the country, and the focus on education, this really got brought into focus with like the Loudoun County situation, COVID, the way that schools were teaching kids and the things that kids were being exposed to that really had nothing to do with education. And it came back to me that the teaching profession has to be something that conservatives take back over, not to indoctrinate anybody, but to do exactly the kinds of things that when you say that I can't believe that this is happening, to actually write those situations within the classrooms so that kids are prepared to understand how to do homework, how to show their work for math, how to properly write on a piece of paper, because it's all about communication. It's not just the knowledge that you give kids, right? The way you teach children to become adults and be able to fit within society as productive people in society is as critical as any math problem that you can teach them. and things like citizenship and you know, social studies where you're exposed to history. And I'm not talking about just the white man's history. I'm talking about history, culture, appreciation for the things that make us different, in a way that is respectful of people and cultures, right? Instead of saying that I have to, you know, I can't possibly be appreciative of your culture unless I believe in reparations. This is just my take on one particular thing, right? I think that I can appreciate the contributions of society by members of any race or culture, so long as they benefited society, right? So I was kind of taken back when I first found out that you were going to teach. I believe that it is a noble profession. And I think you should be commended for your willingness to want to step into that, what can oftentimes be a landmine, both politically and opportunity, you know, from an opportunity perspective. So, you know, kudos to you for wanting to be that person who's going to help children.
Yeah, it's interesting. And one of the things that I asked them, because there was, you know, I'd go around and grades came out while I was in class, and there were kids and they're like, yeah, I got an F here, I got an F there, I got an F here. I don't, you know, whatever. It doesn't matter. And I asked my co-teacher, I was like, so how many of these kids won't go on to 7th grade? And he's like, oh, they'll all go.
Pass. Yeah.
He goes, it doesn't matter. They'll all go. There's no holding them back anymore. And I was like, well, is that from, you know, the No Child Left Behind era? Is that what this is? That no matter what they do, they're gonna go on forward, you know? And if that's the case, then yeah, No Child Left Behind needs to be left way behind. Well, and I know it's been adjusted since then, but
I think No Child Left Behind, that's not what its purpose was. It said that we were going to identify kids that needed help, and we were going to spend whatever resources it took to give them the help so that they weren't left behind. But the thing you're talking about is a social construct that goes back to the 70s, where it's called social promotion. And then you know, you could fail a grade, and I don't know if they even fail kids anymore, right? It sounds like from what you're saying in the explanation that they don't hold you back right now. But you used to be held back.
That's what it sounded like to me, that there's no holding them back anymore.
Yeah, when I was
unless the parent wants them to.
Yeah, when I was a kid, you could be held back up to 2 years out of 12. And then you were socially promoted. So even social promotion, and I'm talking about the 70s for me, right? I went to grade school in the 70s. So social promotion was a thing. As was, they were just starting to do like AP class, or what they called honors classes. They now call AP classes, but
well, some depending on the state, you know, like everybody says, oh, well, you graduate when you're 18, but depending on the state, some states have it where like you can go to school up to as old as 22. So it's not like, okay, well, that's, you know, you got held back, like you said, 2 years, right? And you got held back 2 years, and 18, you're a sophomore. Well, you're done. You know, you're not going to be able to graduate. So they have
and some states
have an age.
Yeah, once you're 18, whatever year if you're 18, whatever year you're in is your last year, whether you graduate or not. Which I think is a travesty. I mean, I don't think a 35-year-old should matriculate with a 16-year-old or 17-year-old, right?
No.
But at that point, it's not like, well, you don't belong in the high school, but we're going to put you in this alternative education thing where you can go, and it's more like an adult education thing, and you still get a high school diploma, but you just don't do it in the auspices of a high school where you're exposed to kids, right? If you got like a ZZ Top beard, you don't need to be hanging out with like 12-year-olds. I say this as somebody who's got a beard.
See, like in Ohio, compulsory education laws require children to be between the ages of 16 and 18 to attend school. But I think that you can be older.
Yeah, the maximum.
The maximum age is 20.
Yeah.
Actually, Ohio, it says one state, Ohio, sets its upper age limit at 22, while 9 have set the maximum age at 20. So, yeah. So, you know, anywhere you can still go to school anywhere between 20 and 22. But your compulsory is 18. So if you're 18, you have to go. If you're 19, 20, 21, or 22. So, who's that? Wow, Karen. Yeah, they have here in Ohio. They have that too. The
you get college credit.
Dual,
the
college credit program. I actually the first semester I went to college, I was in classes with high school kids. So yeah.
Yeah, 75. Yeah, I was in. I started high school in. The hell was it? Oh, so 75. I was in the 5th grade. So, I was the trumpet player in a bicentennial parade.
Yeah. So yeah, that's one of the federal grants. I believe it's the schools will get money from federal resources to provide that opportunity to their kids now. So
cool, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Hey, listen, man, I appreciate you coming on. And I've been at this for 3 hours, and it's been fun. It's always more fun.
You only got 5 left.
When Jesus Christ. So I did the stream that I did for when I live streamed the county caucus a couple weeks ago. That was a 6.5 hour stream, and counting travel time and everything else was like a 12-hour day. So
Jesus,
it was fun. I mean, it was really fun, and a lot of people out here, they appreciate it because nobody really does anything for the people in the hinterlands. So it's fun, and the local. I got like 5 county parties now that want me to start doing stuff for them, including live stream their monthly meetings. So we'll see how it goes. But I've gotten some actual pay for out of it as well, which is good because that money all funnels back into the into the effort, right? So okay, so with that said, Buckeye, thanks so much, man. I appreciate you coming in and hanging out, and I'll catch up with you later. Are you turning your camera on? Or we gotta look at your kids? Your kids want to see what's up?
Yeah, hold on.
Okay, let's do that. Here, I'm gonna
say hi?
my view. So we're gonna look at one of Buckeye's pride and joys.
No, you don't want to say hi? No,
you can say.
You want to see cats in the chat?
Ooh,
see if they remember. Yeah, you want to see if they remember? Say cats in the chat.
Yeah, you're not coming
say
up on
hi.
screen.
Am I not coming up on your?
No, sir.
What's going on? Let me try this again.
Ah, there we go. Hi there. Oh, maybe I should turn my camera on. Can you see me? Yeah, you can see me, right? Yeah. It's hard to tell.
Yeah.
Long hair on kids, right? I stopped having long hair a long time ago.
This is my daughter. Oh, there's cats. There's cats in the chat. Can you see MP waving at you?
Hi there.
Say hi.
Super cute. And she's younger, right? So she's 5.
She'll start. Yeah, she'll start. She starts school in September.
Oh, check it out.
Are you going to go to kindergarten? Yeah. Are you excited to go to kindergarten?
Make new friends.
Can you count to 100 all by yourself? Yeah. Are you learning how to read? No. Are you learning how to write your name? Yes. You were writing your name at school the other day. Do you know how to spell? Yeah. Can you spell cat? C-A-T. Can you spell dog? Not yet. You can? Yeah. What's the song for what's her name? Wednesday. What's that Wednesday song that you're singing all the time? Can you hear her?
A little bit.
Barely.
Yeah.
A little bit. Yeah. He's singing that Wednesday song.
All right, on.
Yeah. Are we gonna stream this week while you're in spring break? Yeah, we're gonna be on a couple days. You tell MPU to come say hello.
Oh, I'll definitely come and say hi.
Yeah, we're gonna come and we're gonna play some games.
I want to see cats on the TV.
I see some cats in the chat.
Cats in
say
the chat.
Get them ready. Say get them ready. Wow, Karen says, is my daughter still styling your hair? Of course. And we have hairstyle day when Daddy sits in the chair and you do my hair, huh? Yeah. All right. Say goodnight, everyone.
Good night.
You're gonna wave. Wave.
I'll put some more cats in the chat for you.
Look, there's cats. Here they are. Don't you smile though. Don't you dare smile. No, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Okay, brother, man. Listen, I appreciate it very much.
Appreciate you having the conversation, though.
Have yourself a good one, man. I appreciate you dropping in and helping me get the audio worked out. So now I can send a message out to Liberal Cluck and bring him on the show.
Yeah. See, not only did we get it worked out, but we put it to good use.
Yeah, more cats in the chat. Okay.
All right. We'll see y'all later.
Take care, Buckeye. We'll talk to you soon, brother. And that, my friends, is going to do it for us. This has been a 3-hour Sunday night, not really so special, but just special anyway, version of the More Perfect Union. The place to talk about constitutional politics, whether you're in Western Wisconsin or anywhere in the United States and beyond. Don't be afraid to challenge people's perceptions about what it takes to be free in this country, and do as Buckeye did. Figure out what the 9th Amendment is and what the 10th Amendment is and why they're important to protecting the liberties that you have by restricting the rights that the government has. And just remember, what is not explicitly said to them is retained by you. So thanks very much. Hey, don't forget to check out our YouTube channel, The More Perfect Union 4812. Look at our interview with Supreme Court Justice candidate Daniel Kelly. You guys, take care until the next time you see me, which might be tomorrow. The More Perfect Union. Be good. Take care.